Welcome to my channel Bookish English. I am Ariel, and I want you to be honest with yourself for a second. How many times did you stay silent? Not because you didn't know English, but because something inside you stopped you. You understood everything. You even had the sentence ready. But in that exact moment, your mind froze, your confidence disappeared, and you chose silence. Then later, when you were alone, everything came back perfectly, and that quiet regret stayed with you. That is not just a small problem. That is a pattern that is slowly shaping how you see yourself. And if you don't break it, it will keep controlling every opportunity you get. But here is the truth that can change everything. Your voice is not missing. It is blocked. And once you understand how to unlock it, you will never go back to that silent version of yourself again. Stay with me till the end, because this is not just a video. This is the moment your silence starts to break. Chapter 1: The Silent Beginning. There was a time when I understood English quite well. I could follow conversations. I could read simple texts. I could even form sentences in my mind. But when it came to speaking, something inside me stopped. My voice did not come out. My thoughts became heavy. My confidence dropped in seconds. It felt like I knew everything, yet I could say nothing. If you are honest with yourself, you may have felt this too. You sit with people. You listen carefully. You understand most of what is being said. Sometimes you even prepare a response in your mind. It feels clear. It feels correct. But the moment you try to speak, everything changes. Your heart starts beating faster. Your mind goes blank. Your words disappear. And instead of speaking, you stay silent. You smile. You nod. You let the moment pass. Then something painful happens. When you are alone, the same sentence comes back to you. Clear, simple, perfect. You realize that you knew what to say. You just could not say it at the right time. And that realization hurts more than not knowing anything. Because now you cannot blame your knowledge. You start blaming yourself. This is the silent struggle that many learners live with every day. It is not visible to others. People think you are quiet. People think you are shy. But inside, there is a strong voice that wants to speak. There are ideas. There are thoughts. There is expression. But something is stopping it. For a long time, I believed the problem was my English. I thought I needed more grammar, more vocabulary, more practice. I kept learning. I kept watching videos. I kept reading. But nothing changed in my speaking, because the problem was not what I was learning. The problem was what I was not doing. I was not speaking. And the reason was simple. I was afraid. I remember sitting in a group where everyone was talking. Some people were fluent. Some were not. Some made mistakes, but they were still speaking. They were part of the conversation. They were expressing themselves freely. And I was sitting there, quiet. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I was holding myself back. That feeling is difficult to explain. You feel present, but invisible. You feel capable, but silent. You feel ready, but frozen. And slowly, this silence starts becoming your identity. You start telling yourself, I can understand English, but I cannot speak. You repeat this again and again. It becomes a belief. And once something becomes a belief, it starts controlling your action. You stop trying. You avoid speaking situations. You choose comfort over growth. You wait for the perfect moment. You tell yourself that one day you will feel ready, but that day never comes. There was one moment that changed how I saw everything. I was alone, thinking in English. I was forming simple sentences in my mind. It felt easy. It felt natural. There was no pressure, no fear. And suddenly, a question came to me. If I can think in English when I am alone, why can I not speak in front of others? The answer was clear. It was not my English. It was my fear. That realization was powerful. It did not solve everything immediately, but it changed my direction. For the first time, I stopped blaming my ability. I started understanding my behavior. I realized that I was not someone who could not speak. I was someone who was not speaking. There is a difference, a big difference. When you say, I cannot speak, you close the door. You accept it as your reality. But when you say, I am not speaking yet, you leave space for change. You accept that you are in a process. From that day, I started observing myself more carefully. I noticed the exact moment when I stopped myself, the moment when I started overthinking, the moment when I tried to create the perfect sentence in my mind. And I understood something very important. Perfection was not helping me. It was stopping me. I wanted every sentence to be correct. I wanted every word to be perfect. I wanted to sound confident before I even spoke. And because of that, I was not speaking at all. But real conversations do not wait for perfection. They move fast. They are natural. People make mistakes. They pause. They repeat. And still, they communicate. I was not communicating. I was trying to perform. And performance creates pressure. When I understood this, something shifted inside me. I started seeing speaking as a simple act of expression, not a test of perfection. I started understanding that communication is more important than correctness. And I slowly accepted that mistakes are not a problem. Silence is. If you are in this stage right now, you need to hear this clearly. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not behind. You are not less capable. You are simply at the beginning of your speaking journey. And every journey starts with one step. Not a perfect step, a real step. You already know more English than you think. Your mind is not empty. It is full. The only thing missing is action. The only thing missing is the courage to use what you already know. And that courage does not come from waiting. It comes from doing. Your journey will not begin when you feel confident. Your journey will begin when you decide to speak, even without confidence. That is the silent beginning. And that is where real change starts. Chapter 2. Fear of being judged. There was something deeper than silence that was controlling me, and for a long time I did not understand it. It was not my grammar. It was not my vocabulary. It was a feeling that came just before I tried to speak. A quiet but powerful fear that asked me one question again and again. What will people think about me? That single thought was enough to stop everything. My mind became slow. My confidence dropped. My voice stayed inside me. And even though I wanted to speak, I chose silence because it felt safer than being judged. If you look closely at your own experience, you will notice the same pattern. You are not always afraid of English. You are afraid of people's reactions. You imagine that if you make a mistake, others will notice it immediately. You feel that they will judge you. You feel that they will think you are weak or not intelligent. And because of these thoughts, you create pressure on yourself before you even speak. This pressure is not coming from outside. It is coming from inside your own mind. I remember how strong this feeling used to be. Before speaking, I was not thinking about what I wanted to say. I was thinking about how I would sound. I was checking every word in my mind. I was trying to build a perfect sentence. I was trying to avoid every possible mistake. And while I was doing all this, the conversation moved forward without me. I missed my chance. And after that, I felt disappointed again. The truth is very simple, but it is hard to accept at first. Most people are not judging you as much as you think. They are busy with their own thoughts. They are focused on their own words. They are also thinking about how they sound. The person you think is judging you may be feeling the same fear inside, but your mind creates a different story. It makes you believe that everyone is watching you closely, waiting for you to make a mistake. This belief becomes very powerful. It starts controlling your behavior. You stop taking risks. You stop speaking freely. You try to protect your image instead of expressing your ideas. And this is where the real problem begins. Because language is not something you protect. It is something you use. It grows only when you use it. One day, I noticed something that changed my thinking. I saw people speaking English with mistakes. Simple mistakes. Clear mistakes. But they were still confident. They were still part of the conversation. They were not stopping themselves. They were not overthinking every word. And something inside me asked a very important question. If they can speak with mistakes and still feel comfortable, then why am I stopping myself? That question stayed with me for a long time. It slowly opened my eyes. I realized that my problem was not the fear of making mistakes. My problem was the fear of being seen making mistakes. I was trying to look perfect before I was even ready. I was trying to protect my image instead of improving my ability. That was the moment I understood something important. Fear of judgment is not about language. It is about ego. It is about how you see yourself and how you want others to see you. And when your focus is on your image, your growth stops. I started changing my thinking step by step. It was not easy at first. The fear did not disappear suddenly, but I began to question it. Every time I felt that fear, I asked myself, is this real or is this just my imagination? And most of the time, it was just my imagination. I also started taking small actions. I did not try to speak long sentences. I did not try to impress anyone. I only focused on expressing one simple idea, one clear thought. And when I did that, something surprising happened. People understood me. They responded normally. Some even encouraged me. No one reacted the way I had imagined in my mind. That experience was powerful. It showed me the difference between fear and reality. My fear was loud, but reality was simple. I also learned another important lesson. People do not respect perfection as much as they respect effort. When you try to speak, even with mistakes, you show courage. You show that you are learning. You show that you are improving. And that creates respect, not judgment. Think about your own behavior. When you see someone learning something new, you do not laugh at them. You understand their effort. You appreciate their courage. The same is true for you. Most people will understand your effort, and those who judge do not matter in your journey. This understanding slowly changed my confidence. I stopped trying to sound perfect. I started trying to be clear. I stopped thinking about what people would think. I started thinking about what I wanted to say, and that shift made a big difference. Your focus decides your confidence. If your focus is on people, your fear will grow. If your focus is on your message, your confidence will grow. You do not need to remove fear completely. That is not realistic. Even today, sometimes I feel a little nervous. But the difference is, I do not let that fear stop me. I speak anyway, and every time I do that, my confidence becomes stronger. Confidence is not the absence of fear. It is the ability to act even when fear is present. If you are waiting to feel completely confident before you speak, you will wait for a very long time. But if you decide to speak even with fear, your growth will start immediately. So the next time you feel that fear, do not run away from it. Do not believe every thought your mind creates. Just take a small step. Speak one sentence. Share one idea. Break your silence once. Because the truth is clear, people are not watching you as closely as you think. And even if someone judges you, it does not define who you are. Your actions define you. Your courage defines you. And the moment you stop fearing judgment, you start owning your voice. Chapter 3. The Translation Trap. There was a hidden habit inside me that I did not notice for a long time, and that habit was quietly slowing down everything I was trying to build. I believed I was practicing English, but in reality, I was doing something else. Every time I wanted to speak, I first created the sentence in my own language. Then I searched for English words. Then I tried to arrange them correctly. And by the time I was ready, the moment had already passed. It felt like I was always late, not because I did not know English, but because my mind was working in the wrong way. You may already feel this struggle. You want to say something simple, something easy, but your brain becomes heavy. You pause, you think, you translate, you check grammar, and this process takes time, too much time. Conversations do not wait for this process. People speak quickly, they react instantly, and while they move forward, you stay behind, stuck inside your own thoughts. This is the translation trap. It feels helpful, but it is not. It gives you the illusion of control, but it actually takes away your natural flow. It makes speaking feel like a difficult task, not a natural action. And slowly, it creates fear. Because when you cannot respond quickly, you start feeling pressure. When you feel pressure, your confidence drops. And when your confidence drops, you stop speaking. I remember how tired I used to feel before even speaking one sentence. It was not physical tiredness, it was mental. My brain was doing double work. First thinking in one language, then converting it into another. It was like trying to run while carrying extra weight. No matter how much effort I put in, I could not feel light or free. Then something small but powerful happened. One day, I noticed myself thinking in English while I was alone. Not full sentences, not perfect grammar, just simple thoughts. I looked at my surroundings and said in my mind, "This is my room." I picked up a book and thought, "This is a good book." I felt hungry and thought, "I need food." These sentences were not impressive, but they were direct. They came without translation. They felt natural. That moment changed how I understood fluency. Fluency is not about how many words you know. Fluency is about how fast you can think. And you cannot think fast if you are translating every idea. At first, it was difficult to accept this. I had spent so much time translating that it felt normal. It felt like the only way to speak. But I decided to test something new. I did not try to change everything at once. I started small, very small. I focused on simple thoughts, daily actions, real situations. When I woke up, I told myself in English, "I am awake now." When I stood up, I said, "I am getting up." When I walked, I said, "I am walking." These were basic sentences, but they trained my brain. They created a direct connection between my thoughts and English. This is where real change begins. When your brain stops depending on translation and starts using English directly, everything becomes smoother. Your thoughts become faster. Your speaking becomes easier. Your confidence grows naturally. At the beginning, it felt slow. Sometimes I stopped. Sometimes I did not find the right word. Sometimes I wanted to go back to my native language because it felt easier. But I stayed consistent. I kept my sentences simple. I did not try to be perfect. I focused on being direct. I also started using a method that helped me a lot. I began describing what I saw around me in English. If I saw a chair, I said, "This is a chair." If I saw people, I said, "They are talking." If I heard a sound, I said, "I can hear something." These small actions made my thinking active. They kept my mind engaged in English. Slowly, something started changing inside me. I was no longer translating every sentence. Some thoughts started coming directly in English. It was not perfect, but it was faster. It was lighter. It felt real. There was one moment that I will never forget. Someone asked me a simple question, and for the first time, I answered without translating. The sentence came naturally. It was not long, it was not complex, but it was immediate. And that feeling was powerful. It felt like I had finally taken a real step forward. That moment gave me confidence. Not because I spoke perfectly, but because I spoke naturally. And that is the goal. Not perfect speaking, but natural speaking. Many learners make the mistake of chasing complexity. They want to use advanced words. They want to sound impressive, but that only creates pressure, and pressure slows you down. Instead, you need to build speed. You need to build comfort, and that comes from simplicity. Your brain needs training, not pressure. If you train it with simple, direct sentences, it will become faster. It will become stronger. It will start responding naturally. And once that happens, speaking becomes easier. You must understand one important thing. Thinking in English is a skill. It does not happen automatically. You have to build it. Slowly, daily, with patience. Do not be afraid if your thoughts are not perfect. Do not stop if your sentences are broken. That is part of the process. The goal is not perfection. The goal is connection. Connection between your thoughts and English. Because once that connection becomes strong, you do not need translation anymore. Your mind becomes free. Your words come faster. Your confidence grows. And that is the moment when speaking starts feeling natural, not forced. So if you truly want to improve, stop depending on translation. Start building direct thinking. Start small. Stay consistent. Trust the process. Because the moment you free your mind from translation, you open the door to real fluency. Chapter 4. Speaking before perfection. For a long time, I believed something that felt true, but it was actually holding me back. I believed that I needed to become good before I could start speaking. I thought I had to fix my grammar, improve my vocabulary, and build confidence first. Only then, I told myself, I would begin speaking. This belief felt logical. It felt safe. But in reality, it was the biggest reason I stayed silent for so long. You may feel the same way right now. You are learning every day. You are watching videos. You are understanding more than before. But when it comes to speaking, you hesitate. You stop yourself. You tell yourself that you are not ready yet. You feel that your English is not strong enough. You feel that your sentences are not correct enough. And because of that, you keep waiting. You keep delaying. You keep preparing without actually using what you have learned. The problem with this approach is simple. The moment you are waiting for will never come. There is no point where you suddenly feel fully ready. There is no moment when everything becomes perfect. Language does not work like that. Confidence does not work like that. Both are built through action. not before action. And if you keep waiting for perfection, you will keep delaying your progress. I remember the moment when I realized this. I had already spent a lot of time learning English. I could understand conversations better. I could read with more ease. I could even form sentences in my mind. But when I looked at my speaking, it was still weak. It had not improved much. And that was confusing for me. I was working hard, but I was not moving forward. Then I asked myself a simple question. How many times have I actually spoken? The answer was uncomfortable. Not enough. That was the moment I understood the truth. I was not failing because I did not know English. I was failing because I was not using it. I was collecting knowledge, but I was not turning it into action. And without action, nothing changes. That realization pushed me to make a different choice. I decided that I would stop waiting. I would stop preparing for a perfect moment. I would start speaking, even if I felt unready. The first few attempts were not easy. My voice was not stable. My sentences were not smooth. I paused often. I searched for words. Sometimes I felt embarrassed. Sometimes I felt that I was not doing it right. But something important was happening. I was finally speaking. And that changed everything. Because when you speak, you activate your real learning system. Your brain starts working differently. It stops focusing only on understanding. It starts focusing on expression. It starts connecting ideas faster. It starts finding words more quickly. And slowly, your ability begins to grow. At the beginning, I made many mistakes. Some were small. Some were obvious. Sometimes I used the wrong tense. Sometimes I used the wrong word. But I did not stop. I continued speaking, and I noticed something interesting. People still understood me. Conversations still moved forward. The world did not stop because I made a mistake. That was a powerful lesson. I had spent so much time fearing mistakes. But in reality, mistakes were not stopping communication. Silence was. When you make a mistake, you are still trying. You are still learning. You are still improving. But when you stay silent, you are not giving yourself any chance to grow. This changed my mindset completely. I stopped seeing mistakes as something negative. I started seeing them as part of the process. Each mistake showed me something. Each mistake helped me improve. And the more I spoke, the more I learned. I also noticed another important change. The more I spoke, the less I cared about being perfect. And the less I cared about being perfect, the more natural my speaking became. Because my focus shifted. I was no longer trying to impress people. I was trying to express my thoughts. That shift is very important. When your goal is to impress, you create pressure. You try to use big words. You try to sound advanced. You overthink every sentence. But when your goal is to express, you become simple. You become clear. You use what you know. And that makes speaking easier. I started using simple English. Very simple. I did not try to make long sentences. I did not try to sound perfect. I only focused on sharing my ideas. If I wanted to say something, I said it in the simplest way possible. And that gave me confidence. Not because my English was perfect, but because I was finally using my voice. There was a moment when I said something wrong in front of others. I knew it was not correct. I felt it immediately. But instead of stopping, I continued. I finished my thought. And something surprising happened. The conversation continued normally. No one reacted in a negative way. No one focused on my mistake. They focused on my message. That moment taught me something I will never forget. People care more about what you say than how perfectly you say it. This understanding removed a big weight from my mind. I no longer felt that I had to be perfect to be accepted. I felt free to speak. I felt free to try. and that freedom helped me grow faster. You need to understand this clearly. You are not supposed to be perfect right now. You are supposed to start right now. Perfection is not the beginning. It is the result. If you wait for perfection, you delay your growth. But if you start with imperfection, you begin your journey. Every time you speak, you take a step forward. Every time you stay silent, you stay in the same place. It is that simple. You do not need big confidence to start. You only need a small decision. A decision to speak, even when you feel unready. A decision to use your voice, even when it is not perfect. Because the truth is clear, confidence does not come before speaking. Confidence comes because of speaking. If you want to become better, you have to go through this stage. You have to feel uncomfortable. You have to make mistakes. You have to speak with hesitation at first. But that is not a sign of failure. That is a sign of growth. Every fluent speaker you see today went through this stage. They were not perfect in the beginning. They did not wait for the right moment. They started with what they had, and they improved step by step. You can do the same. You do not need to change everything at once. You do not need to become perfect overnight. You only need to start. Speak one sentence, share one idea, express one thought, and then repeat it again. Because the moment you stop waiting for perfection, you unlock your real progress. The moment you speak with courage, even with mistakes, you move forward, and that is where your transformation begins. Chapter 5: My First Small Steps. The real change in my journey did not begin with a big decision or a powerful moment. It began with something very small, something so simple that at first it did not even feel important. For a long time I was searching for a perfect method, a strong system, something advanced that would suddenly make me confident. But nothing worked, because I was looking too far ahead. I was trying to jump to a level that I had not built step by step. The truth that I slowly understood was this: confidence does not come from big actions. It comes from small actions done daily. And once I accepted this, I stopped chasing complexity and started building simple habits that I could actually follow. The first step I took was very personal. I started speaking to myself, not in a complicated way, not in long speeches, but in very simple and direct sentences. At first, it felt unusual, it felt slow, but it also felt safe. There was no one to judge me, no one to interrupt me, and no pressure to be perfect. I could speak at my own pace. I could pause when I needed. I could repeat when I felt unsure. And that freedom allowed me to take my first real step in speaking without fear. When I woke up in the morning, I said simple things like, "I am awake now," or "I need to get ready." When I looked around my room, I described what I saw. I said, "This is my bed," or "My phone is here." These sentences were basic, but they were real, and that made them powerful. Then I added another small habit that changed how my mind worked. I started describing my daily actions in English. Whatever I was doing, I tried to say it in simple words. When I was eating, I said, "I am eating food." When I was walking, I said, "I am going outside." When I was sitting, I said, "I am sitting here." These were not advanced sentences, but they created a connection between my life and the language. English was no longer something I studied. It became something I used. And that small shift made a big difference in how I felt about speaking. I also realized that repetition was not boring when it had meaning. I started repeating useful sentences again and again, but not like a machine. I spoke them with purpose. I used sentences that I knew I would need in real life. Sentences like, "I don't understand," or "Can you say that again?" or "I will try." I spoke them slowly. I spoke them clearly. And over time, they became natural. I did not have to think before saying them. They came automatically, and that gave me confidence. Not because I had learned something new, but because I had made something familiar. There were days when I felt that these steps were too small. I felt that I was not doing enough. I compared myself with others who spoke faster or better. But every time I felt that doubt, I reminded myself of something important. Small steps are not weak steps. They are strong because they are consistent. Anyone can take a big step once, but not everyone can take small steps every day. And it is daily effort that creates real change. So I stayed consistent. Even when I did not feel motivated, I showed up. Even when I felt slow, I continued. I did not focus on how perfect my English sounded. I focused on whether I was using it or not. That simple shift helped me build discipline, and discipline helped me build confidence. Another habit that helped me was asking myself simple questions and answering them in English. I did not try to create difficult questions. I kept them easy and natural. I asked myself things like, what am I doing now? Or what do I want? Or where am I going? Then I answered them in simple sentences. This habit trained my mind to respond. It made my thinking faster. It made my speaking more active. And slowly, I noticed that I was not stopping as much as before. After some time, I felt a real change inside me. My thoughts became lighter. My sentences came more easily. I did not feel afraid of my own voice anymore. That was a very important moment, because earlier, I was not only afraid of people, I was afraid of speaking even when I was alone. But now, I was comfortable with myself. I was using English without pressure, and that comfort became the foundation of my confidence. You need to understand something very clearly. Big confidence is not built by doing something big once. It is built by doing something small again and again. It is built by showing up daily. It is built by trusting simple habits. Many learners ignore these small steps because they do not look impressive. They want fast results. They want advanced methods. But they forget that fluency is not built in one jump. It is built layer by layer. And if your foundation is weak, your progress will not stay strong. I did not try to become perfect. I did not try to become fluent overnight. I only focused on becoming consistent. I focused on using English every day, even in the smallest way. And that decision changed everything. If you feel stuck right now, do not look for something big. Do not wait for a perfect plan. Start small. Speak to yourself. Describe your actions. Repeat useful sentences. Ask simple questions. And most importantly, do it every day. Because the truth is very simple. The smallest actions, when repeated daily, create the biggest transformation. Chapter 6. Building Daily Confidence. Confidence did not suddenly appear in my life like a switch turning on. It did not come in one powerful day where everything became easy and natural. It grew slowly, almost quietly, through daily repetition and small efforts that I chose to continue, even when I did not feel ready. In the beginning, I used to think confidence was something special, something that only certain people had. I believed that confident speakers were born different, or they had something I did not. But over time, I realized that confidence is not a gift. It is a result. It is built step by step, day by day, through consistent action. In the early stage, every time I spoke, I still felt nervous. My voice was not stable. My thoughts were not always clear. But I did not stop. I kept using the small habits I had created. I spoke to myself. I described my actions. I answered my own questions. These were simple practices, but they were powerful because I did them every day. And that consistency started changing my brain in a way I could feel. At first, speaking felt like effort. I had to push myself. I had to remind myself to do it. But after some time, something interesting happened. It started feeling normal. Not easy, but normal. My mind did not resist as much as before. I did not feel that heavy pressure every time I opened my mouth. And that is when I understood something important. Confidence is not about feeling fearless. It is about feeling familiar. The more you repeat something, the more familiar it becomes. And the more familiar it becomes, the less fear you feel. This is how the brain works. It does not like the unknown. It resists anything new. But when you expose it to the same action again and again, it starts accepting it. Speaking English was new for me. That is why I felt fear. But when I spoke every day, even in small ways, my brain slowly accepted it as a normal activity. I also started building a simple daily routine. Nothing complicated, nothing time-consuming, just a few minutes every day where I focused only on speaking. In the morning, I spoke a few sentences about my day. I said what I planned to do. I expressed how I felt. At night, I spoke again. I talked about what I did. I reflected on my day. These moments were short, but they were consistent. And that consistency created a rhythm. This rhythm became my strength. Because once something becomes part of your routine, it becomes easier to follow. You do not need motivation every day. You do not need to feel excited every time. You just follow the habit. And habits are powerful because they reduce resistance. They make action automatic. I also started noticing my progress in a different way. Instead of asking, "Am I perfect now?" I started asking, "Am I better than before?" And the answer slowly became yes. I was not perfect, but I was improving. I was speaking more easily. I was thinking faster. I was making fewer pauses. These small improvements gave me confidence. Confidence grows when you see progress. Not big progress. Real progress. There were still moments when I felt uncomfortable. There were still times when I made mistakes. But those moments did not stop me anymore. Because I had already built a habit of continuing. I had trained myself to move forward even when things were not perfect. Another important change happened in my mindset. I stopped comparing myself with others. In the beginning, I used to look at fluent speakers and feel discouraged. I thought I was far behind. But later, I realized that comparison was not helping me. It was only reducing my confidence. So I shifted my focus. I compared myself with my past version. I looked at where I started and where I was now. And that gave me strength. Because your real competition is not others. It is your previous self. I also understood that confidence is not built only in comfortable situations. It grows when you challenge yourself. So I started taking small risks. I tried to speak in front of others when possible. Not long conversations, just simple sentences. Sometimes it felt uncomfortable. Sometimes I made mistakes. But every time I did it, I became stronger. Each small risk added to my confidence. Each attempt reduced my fear. And slowly, I reached a point where speaking was no longer something I avoided. It became something I accepted. Something I used. Something I was improving every day. One of the most powerful things I learned in this journey is that confidence is a byproduct of action. You do not create confidence by thinking. You create it by doing. Every time you speak, you send a message to your brain. You tell your mind that this action is safe. You tell yourself that you can do it. And the more you repeat this, the stronger that message becomes. There was a time when even saying one sentence felt difficult. But now, I could speak without that same level of fear. Not because I became perfect, but because I became consistent. And consistency changes everything. If you want to build confidence, you need to focus on daily action. Not on big results. Not on fast progress. Just on showing up every day. Speak a little. Practice a little, try a little, and repeat it again. Do not wait for motivation. It will not always be there. Do not wait for the perfect mood. It will not always come. Build a routine. Follow it. Trust it. Because the truth is simple. Confidence is not built in one day. It is built every day. If you stay consistent, if you keep speaking, if you keep trying, you will change, you will improve, you will grow. And one day, you will look back and realize something powerful. The person who was once silent is now speaking. The person who was once afraid is now confident. And it did not happen because of one big step. It happened because of many small steps repeated every single day. Chapter 7. Turning Mistakes into Power. There was a time when every mistake felt like a failure. Not a small failure, but something personal. Every time I said a wrong sentence, I felt it deeply. I felt embarrassed. I felt exposed. And in those moments, I told myself that I needed to be more careful next time. I told myself that I should speak less until I was better. But that thinking slowly pushed me back into silence. Because the more I tried to avoid mistakes, the more I avoided speaking. And the less I spoke, the less I improved. It was a quiet trap that looked like discipline, but it was actually fear. If you are honest, you may feel the same. You want to speak, but you want to speak correctly. You want to sound good. You want to avoid errors. And because of that, you stop yourself before you even begin. You think that mistakes will damage your image. You feel that one wrong sentence will make people judge you. But what if that belief is not true? What if mistakes are not your enemy? What if they are your greatest tool? This question changed everything for me. One day, I paid attention to how I was actually learning. Not how I wanted to learn, but how I was truly improving. And I noticed something very clear. Every time I made a mistake and then corrected it, I remembered that lesson much more strongly than anything I had studied from a book. That experience stayed with me. It became real. It became part of me. But when I only read or watched something without using it, it faded quickly. It did not stay. That was the moment I understood a powerful truth. Mistakes are not a sign that you are failing. They are a sign that you are learning in the right way. Because when you make a mistake, your brain becomes active. It pays attention. It notices the difference between what you said and what you should have said. And that difference creates learning. Real learning. The kind that stays with you. After that realization, I stopped running away from mistakes. I started looking at them differently. Instead of asking, "Why did I say it wrong?" I started asking, "What can I learn from this?" That small shift changed my mindset completely. I was no longer afraid of mistakes. I was curious about them. I remember one situation very clearly. I was speaking, and I used the wrong tense in a sentence. I knew it immediately after I said it. For a second, I felt that old feeling of embarrassment. But instead of stopping, I corrected myself and continued speaking. The conversation did not stop. The other person understood me. And more importantly, I remembered that correction deeply. I never forgot it. That moment showed me something important. Communication does not break because of small mistakes. It continues. And when you correct yourself, you become stronger. From that day, I made a simple rule. I will not stop speaking because of mistakes. I will continue, correct if possible, and move forward. This rule gave me freedom. It removed the pressure of being perfect. It allowed me to stay active in conversations. I also started noticing how other people speak. Even fluent speakers make mistakes sometimes. They pause. They repeat words. They adjust their sentences. But they do not stop. They keep going. Because their focus is not on perfection. Their focus is on communication. That changed how I saw fluency. Fluency is not about speaking without mistakes. It is about speaking without fear. Once I understood this, I became more confident in my practice. I started speaking more freely. I tried new sentences. I experimented with words. Sometimes I was right. Sometimes I was wrong. But every time, I was learning. Mistakes became my teachers, and the more I accepted them, the faster I improved. There is something very important you need to understand. When you avoid mistakes, you also avoid growth. Because growth only happens when you step outside your comfort zone. And when you step outside, mistakes are natural. They are part of the process. If you want to improve quickly, you need to be willing to make mistakes quickly. This does not mean speaking carelessly. It means speaking actively. It means trying. It means using what you know, even if it is not perfect. I also started feeling proud of my mistakes. Not because they were wrong, but because they showed that I was trying. Every mistake was proof that I was moving forward, that I was not stuck anymore, that I was using my English, and that feeling replaced my fear. You need to change how you see mistakes. Do not see them as something negative. See them as something necessary, something useful, something powerful. Because the truth is simple. You cannot become a strong speaker without making mistakes. You cannot improve without trying. And you cannot try if you are afraid of being wrong. Every time you make a mistake and continue speaking, you build confidence. Every time you correct yourself, you build awareness. Every time you try again, you build strength. And slowly, those mistakes become fewer. Not because you avoid them, but because you learn from them. Your goal is not to remove mistakes completely. Your goal is to reduce fear completely. Because when fear is gone, speaking becomes natural. So do not run away from mistakes. Do not hide from them. Use them. Learn from them. Grow with them. Because the moment you stop fearing mistakes, you unlock your real potential. And that is the moment when your English stops being something you study and starts becoming something you live. Chapter 8. The Confidence Breakthrough. There comes a moment in this journey that does not feel loud, but it feels different. It does not arrive with a big announcement, and it does not look like perfection. It feels simple, almost quiet, but inside you, something has changed. You are speaking, not perfectly, but naturally. You are responding, not slowly, but comfortably. And for the first time, you are not fighting with your own mind every time you open your mouth. This is the confidence breakthrough, and it is not something that appears suddenly. It is something you build without even realizing it. In the beginning, every word felt heavy. Every sentence felt like a test. You had to think, translate, check, and then speak. But now, you start noticing small changes. You respond a little faster. You hesitate a little less. You do not stop as much as before. These changes may look small, but they are powerful. They show that your brain is adapting. They show that your practice is working. I remember the first time I truly felt this shift. Someone asked me a question, and without overthinking, I answered. It was not a long answer. It was not perfect, but it was immediate. It came from inside, not from a long process of thinking. And after that moment, I paused and realized something important. I did not feel fear. I felt normal. That feeling was new. Before this, speaking always came with tension. There was always a small fear sitting inside me. But in that moment, I was relaxed. I was present. I was part of the conversation. And that was the first sign that something had changed. Confidence does not mean that you stop making mistakes. It means that mistakes do not stop you anymore. You may still say something wrong. You may still pause sometimes. But now, you continue. You adjust. You correct yourself if needed. And you move forward. This ability to continue, is what creates real confidence. Another change you start noticing is in your thinking. Earlier, your mind was crowded with doubts. You were thinking about grammar, about vocabulary, about how you sound. But now, your mind becomes clearer. You think more about your ideas and less about your mistakes. Your focus shifts from fear to expression, and this shift changes everything. Because when your focus is on expression, your speaking becomes natural. You stop trying to control every word. You allow yourself to speak freely, and that freedom creates flow. There is also an emotional change that happens at this stage. Earlier, you felt nervous before speaking. Now you feel a little excitement. You feel a small desire to speak. You want to try. You want to express. That feeling is very important because it shows that your relationship with English is changing. It is no longer something you fear. It is something you are starting to enjoy. I also started noticing that I was not avoiding speaking situations anymore. Before, I used to stay quiet, even when I had something to say. Now, I was taking small chances. I was adding my thoughts. I was asking simple questions. I was becoming part of the conversation. And every time I did that, my confidence grew a little more. This is how the breakthrough happens, not in one big step, but in many small moments where you choose to speak. You also start realizing that fluency is not about speaking fast or using big words. It is about feeling comfortable while speaking. It is about being able to share your thoughts without fear. And that comfort comes from practice, not from talent. Many people think that confident speakers are naturally gifted, but that is not true. They have simply practiced more. They have made more mistakes. They have taken more risks. And because of that, they have built comfort. You are building the same thing. At this stage, it is important to continue your habits. Do not stop your daily practice. Do not think that you have reached the end, because this is not the end. This is the beginning of a new level. You need to keep speaking, keep expressing, keep challenging yourself a little more. Try to speak in different situations. Try to use new words. Try to share more ideas. And with each step, your confidence will become stronger. There will still be moments when you feel unsure. That is normal. Growth is not a straight line. Some days will feel better than others. But the difference now is that you know how to continue. You know how to handle those moments. You do not stop. You move forward. And that is the real breakthrough. The moment when you stop waiting for confidence and start trusting your progress. When you look back, you will see how far you have come. The person who once stayed silent is now speaking. The person who once feared mistakes is now learning from them. The person who once felt lost is now moving forward with clarity. And this change did not happen by chance. It happened because you took action. You practiced daily. You stayed consistent. You faced your fear. You accepted your mistakes. That is what builds confidence. Not one big moment, but many real moments. And now, you are no longer at the beginning. You are becoming the person you once wanted to be. Chapter 9. Your new English identity. At the beginning of this journey, you were not empty. You were not someone who knew nothing. You were someone who understood, but could not express. You were someone who had thoughts, but could not bring them out. You were someone who stayed silent, not because you had no ability, but because something inside you was holding you back. That something was fear, hesitation, and the habit of waiting. And step by step, you have started breaking that pattern. Not by magic, not by shortcuts, but by real effort and honest understanding. You first faced your silence. You understood that your problem was not a lack of English, but a lack of action. That realization was powerful because it shifted your focus from learning more to using more. Then you faced the fear of being judged. You understood that most of that fear was created inside your own mind. You realized that people are not watching you as closely as you think, and even if they notice your mistakes, it does not define who you are. That awareness gave you the courage to take your first real step. After that, you uncovered the translation trap. You saw how your own thinking process was slowing you down. You learned that fluency is not about knowing complex words, but about thinking directly and responding naturally. That shift in thinking helped you feel lighter and faster. Then you challenged the idea of perfection. You stopped waiting for the perfect moment and started speaking with what you already knew. That decision alone changed your direction because it moved you from preparation to action. You began taking small steps, simple daily actions that did not look impressive but were deeply effective. You spoke to yourself. You described your actions. You repeated useful sentences. You asked and answered simple questions. These habits created a strong foundation. They trained your mind. They built your confidence slowly but surely. Then, you built consistency. You created a routine. You practiced daily, even when you did not feel motivated. And through that consistency, your confidence started growing naturally. You also changed your relationship with mistakes. You stopped fearing them. You started learning from them. You understood that mistakes are not signs of failure, but signs of progress. Each mistake taught you something real. Each correction made you stronger. And by accepting mistakes, you removed a major barrier that was stopping your growth. Then came the moment of breakthrough. Not a perfect moment, but a real one. You started speaking with less fear. You started responding more naturally. You felt more comfortable. You became part of conversations instead of staying outside them. That was the result of everything you had done so far. Not one big action, but many small actions repeated over time. Now, as you stand at this point, something important has changed. You are no longer the same person who started this journey. You may still have things to improve. You may still make mistakes, but your identity has started shifting. You are no longer someone who says, "I cannot speak." You are someone who says, "I am learning to speak." And that difference is powerful because identity shapes behavior. When you see yourself as someone who cannot speak, you avoid speaking. When you see yourself as someone who is improving, you take action. You try. You practice. You grow. This is why your mindset matters as much as your method. As an experienced teacher, I want you to understand something very clearly. Language learning is not just about knowledge. It is about transformation. It is about changing how you think, how you act, and how you see yourself. And that transformation does not happen in one day. It happens through consistent effort, honest reflection, and the courage to continue. At this stage, your goal is not to become perfect. Your goal is to stay consistent. Keep using English in your daily life. Keep speaking, even if it feels uncomfortable sometimes. Keep thinking in English. Keep challenging yourself in small ways. Because growth does not stop here. It continues as long as you continue. There will be days when you feel strong. There will also be days when you feel slow. That is normal. Progress is not always smooth, but what matters is your direction, not your speed. If you keep moving forward, even slowly, you are still improving. Do not compare yourself with others. Every learner has a different journey. Some move faster, some move slower. But your progress is your own. What matters is that you are better than you were before. What matters is that you are taking action. You have already proven something important to yourself. You have shown that you can change. You have shown that you can face your fear. You have shown that you can build new habits. And these are not small achievements. These are the foundations of real confidence. Now it is time to strengthen this identity. See yourself as a speaker, not a perfect speaker, but a growing speaker. Someone who uses English daily. Someone who is not afraid to try. Someone who learns from mistakes and moves forward. When you carry this identity, your actions will follow. You will naturally look for opportunities to speak. You will naturally think in English more often. You will naturally improve. Remember this clearly. Fluency is not a destination where everything becomes perfect. It is a state where you feel comfortable expressing yourself, and you are already moving toward that state. Everything you have learned in this journey is not just theory. It is practical. It is real. It is something you can use every day, and if you continue using it, your progress will continue. The person you wanted to become is not far away. That person is already forming inside you. With every sentence you speak, with every mistake you correct, with every effort you make, you are becoming that person. So do not stop now. Do not go back to silence. Do not wait for a perfect moment again. You have already crossed the hardest part. You have already taken the most important step. Now keep going, because you are no longer just learning English. You are living it. If you've stayed with me till this moment, then something inside you has already shifted. You are no longer the person who stays silent without understanding why. Now you see it clearly. It was never your English, it was your hesitation. And once you see that truth, you cannot ignore it again. From here, you have a choice. You can go back to your old pattern and let silence control you, or you can take one small step today. Speak one sentence. Break that pattern once. Because that one action is not small. It is the beginning of your new identity. You don't need perfect English. You don't need confidence first. You only need a decision that you will not stay silent anymore. Because every time you speak, you prove to yourself that you can. The version of you who speaks confidently is not far away. It is built every time you choose to use your voice. Thanks for watching this video, and I will see you soon in the next video.